Well, welcome everybody. As you see, we don't do any practice today. Just sit, relax, enjoy the talk if you can understand me, and if you don't understand it, laugh at my face. Today we're going to talk about understanding Qigong. It's going to be an introductory talk, so we won't talk about the actual exercises at this moment. And I've explained why I've written this down. I will be reading this, so sometimes I have to look at what the heck did I write now. But anyway, it's for first time for me as well, so let's hope it goes well, and let's sail the ship. So as you may or may not have read in the WhatsApp, the first thing is, what are we talking about? Words matter. Yes, before we can start talking about Qigong, we will first have to make sure that we are on the same page. Ancient Chinese philosophers all had, as different as their ideas were, one thing in common. They always started with a clarification of the words they used and how they saw the context of these words. Even the Sun Tzu Bingfa, mistakenly known in the West as the art of war, but more correctly translated as methods of the military, starts with an explanation of what Sun Tzu thinks these military methods are. They are of vital importance to the state. They are a matter of life and death, and they are the path of survival and destruction. Mind you, these are not moral warnings. These are Master Sun's explanations of what he means with the words military methods. He is defining them. There are, of course, exceptions to the rule, and it will be no big surprise that these exceptions are Taoist philosophers. One that comes to mind is, of course, Lao Tzu, the author of the Daodejing, who does something very peculiar. He does not start his explanation with a clarification of what his words mean. Nope. He starts with a clarification on what they do not mean. We'll talk about that later. Yes. Well, let's start defining what we are talking about. First, we talk about the soil, and later we will grow the flower. Nobody hears what is being said, the speaker and the audience. Imagine me in some kind of fantasy world, having lived in the forest for a long time, living with the animals around me, and now returned to human society. I am speaking to an audience about the marvelous subject of birds. I admire them. They gave me pleasure in the forest with their singing when I felt lonely. As there was no YouTube or Netflix, I enjoyed watching them fly, things like that. I just like them because they are what they are, and they do as they do. They make me happy. Now imagine my audience, divided between cooks and farmers. The cooks hear me talking about a possible exquisite meal and think, how do I prepare it? As such is their world. Cooks seek potential food. The farmers, on the other hand, hear me talking about a pest that ruins their crops. They ask themselves, how do I get rid of it? As they see potential ruin. So suddenly there are three birds. The one I am talking about, the flying food the cooks hear me talking about, and the crop-killing pest that the farmers hear me elaborate upon. They are not the same. So the question is, what happens now? I am going to talk about Qigong. Will I be speaking about the same Qigong as you are hearing me speak about? What you name does not exist. The first line of the Daodejing. Lao Tzu, the author of the Daodejing, starts with a clarification of what his words do not mean. The Tao that can be named is not the everlasting Tao. First of all, it is lost through the centuries, but like Zhuang Tzu, Lao Tzu uses humor. In this case, he uses a word pun because in Chinese he says, Dao ke Dao, fei jiang Dao. Something like, the Dao you can Dao is not the everlasting Dao. Dao, 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 Dao. The key to the joke lies, of course, in the word Dao, which can mean things that, in our language, seem to differ greatly from one another, such as the way, like in the way of the warrior. But it can also mean walking, in the sense of moving. It can mean to speak, in the sense of giving meaning to. Actually, it means all these different meanings at the same time. This is not so strange if you realize that it in fact has only one conceptual meaning. Something vague like putting order to things. If you put order to words, then you are speaking. If you put order to movement, then you have some sort of going forward. So Lao Tzu is using the word Dao as a very precise choice. The word is in itself already conceptual, apparently even to the Chinese of his own time. And what the word means depends on the context. Therefore, what Lao Tzu actually is saying is the Dao which you can give a name is not the Dao that I am talking about. Now, although I am not a Taoist, nor an expert on Taoism, I often do get questions about the Daodejing. But actually, I'm still stuck at trying to understand the depth of this first sentence. If you give something a name, then it is not what you just have given a name. How does this work? Let me give you an example. Many years ago, I was invited to give a workshop for school children in the age of, give or take, 11, 12 years old. We were standing in the schoolyard, and I was in fact thinking to teach them some flashy kung fu moves. Because of their young age, I had the idea that young people tended to want to move a lot. To my surprise, they had prepared all kinds of questions about what they called Chinese philosophy. So I answered questions about yin and yang, about acupuncture and the meridian system, and so on. And suddenly, this girl asked about exactly this sentence. She had read the Daodejing, but this sentence had raised questions. Mind you, a 12-year-old girl. Now it was very sunny, and I was standing in the shade of a large tree. And underneath that tree, there was lying a dead sparrow. This gave me an idea, and I asked the group, what is a bird? They came up with all sorts of comments, like, well, it has feathers, but also it can fly, and it sings. So I took the dead sparrow in my hand, and I asked them, what is this? A bird, they said. And I answered, but it is not flying, and it is not singing. And then they got confused. Now, had they said it is a dead bird, then I wouldn't have had a story to tell, of course. But this is actually what the Daodejing says. You cannot give something a name because there is no word that describes all it is. Okay, now we have talked about cooks, about farmers, we've talked about dead birds. What does this have to do with an introduction to Qigong? Well, it is my elaborate way of saying that we cannot talk about Qigong simply because the word means so many different things to different people. There are no side effects, the bandwidth of a medicine. So it is imperative that we first have a mutual understanding of what it is that we are talking about. Now, first of all, our misunderstanding of the subject of Qigong is quite normal in this modern world. This is because we are taught to name things totally wrong. Let's look, for example, at a Western medicinal drug. Doesn't really matter which one. If you take whatever which drug out of your medicine cupboard, then you will find a prescription inside the box, and on that prescription, one of the things they inform you about is the side effects of the drug. Now let me repeat that, so that we're on the same page. The side effect of the drug. This is an extraordinary example of how we are systematically taught to think wrong. What is actually going on? This is in fact quite simple to understand. When the scientists were researching this specific drug for that specific disease or discomfort. They discovered that it also does this and that and that. Let's say that they found the medicine to have 10 effects, depending on who takes it. That's 9 effects more than they were searching for, but they sell it only for the one effect that it has on most people, or for the one that was the financial reason it was being investigated in the first place. The other 9 are being put away as side effects. This is wrong. They are equally strong effects. The medicine does 10 things, not just one. Now, yes, I know that, well, in the case of aspirin, this fact is widely recognized, and aspirin is nowadays also being prescribed as a medicine to thin the blood. And there are even medicines that are actually mainly used for what originally was considered to be a side effect. There was this medicine that was researched as a drug for heart problems, for example. And now we know it as Viagra. Not me, of course. But that's not the point that I'm trying to make. The point that I'm trying to make is that we have learned to name something according to the one thing we want it to do, whilst disregarding the other 9 things it does as well, and placing these under the header side effects. Remember the first line of the Daodejing. This takes us back to Qigong. As for Qigong, we have to think differently as well. It is what it is, not that one thing that we want it to be. Despite all commerce and wishful thinking around it, Qigong is not a health exercise. It is not an internal power exercise. It is not a mindfulness exercise, and it is not meant for mental relaxation, and so on and so on. Actually, all these things are not even side effects. They are prerequisites. They are conditions that you first must meet in order to eventually understand Qigong. How you feel because of your practice is not a goal. It is not even a side effect. It's just one small step in your development. Moreover, once you get at a certain level of skill, Qigong doesn't feel nice at all. On the contrary, it can become quite uncomfortable. So don't think of Qigong based upon the single effect you like or desire from it. Then, what is Qigong? Well, that is simple. Qigong is just what the word says, albeit in Chinese. It is skill in Qi. Nothing more, nothing less. Forget what you have learned. The experienced beginner. If Qigong is like a medicine that you take for one result, but which gives you many side effects, which are not side effects, then how do we get the full picture? Well, that's a very good question, because where Qigong is concerned, we all are bad learners. We all want to do Qigong right, and that's exactly where we go wrong. That is because when we start to learn the movements, we can't yet experience the why of a certain exercise. Now, it is very, very important to realize that the movement is not supposed to lead you to understanding. Instead, it is the other way around. It is your personal understanding that makes your movement. Form follows function. This is why we will not yet be able to perform the how properly. Reading texts and books, or listening to talks about heavenly orbits and so on, such as this one. That is not knowledge. It is a brain malfunction. It is the brain that wants to know things. But although you do need some basic knowledge, for example about the meridian system, you cannot learn Qigong with your head. You'll have to experience it with your entire being. So since we lack a proper level of understanding, we will not be able to do the exercise the right way. We can at best only perform it at our own level. Which leads us to the next question. Our own level, what is that exactly? This is a very important question, because when we start to learn, we don't know anything yet. That means that the movement we are copying from our teacher is learned by us through eyes that lack understanding. Ergo, if we continue to perform the moves of that exercise exactly as in our beginning phase, then we will continue to do them wrong. But nevertheless, here we are. One has to start somewhere, and now we have done our best to copy the moves of the master. And after that, we continue to perform these moves in exactly the same way as we have ingrained them in our physique. But by continuing to do so, we do not allow our growing experience and understanding to reshape the movements. And in this manner, by doing our best, we block our own progress. This means that if you really want to learn Qigong, then you first learn the moves and you study the theory behind every movement. This will lead to sensations, experiences, and then, and this is very important, you allow these sensations to reshape your moves, and so on and so on. It's a never-ending process until you finally have stopped moving. This process of reshaping your Qigong movements follows three basic guidelines. Of course, besides studying theory and practicing. 1. The sensation has to be a constant, equally spread out over a surface as large as possible, internally as well as externally. I repeat, the sensation has to be a constant, equally spread out over a surface as large as possible, internally as well as externally. You have heard this one already many times before in my classes, and you will hear it many times more as it is the most important saying we have. It has so many layers. On a basic level of Qigong, it means this. If you get, let's say, warm hands during a certain exercise, then you try to adjust how you move through that exercise, adjust the shape of the movement, adjust your mindset, and so on, in such a manner that you eventually feel this warmth not only continuously and without changes or interruptions, but also spreading out through the entire arm, into the chest, into the abdomen, and into the entire body. Two, there's always a sensation behind the sensation. I repeat, there is always a sensation behind the sensation. You've heard me tell the following story 1,000 times already, but here you get it again. Let's say you are in a bar and you want to talk to your friend. Now you can't hear his response because of the noise, so you ask the people standing around you to be quiet for a moment. As they are very kind to you, they keep quiet. But then you still can't hear what your friend is saying because of the volume of the music. You hadn't noticed it before because of the noise of everybody talking. But now you do, so you ask the bartender to turn down the volume. Everybody is very nice to you, so he does, and still you can't hear what your friend is saying, because only now you notice that the bartender himself is making a lot of noise whilst cleaning the glasses. So you ask him to pause for a moment. He does. And finally you notice that a lot of traffic noise comes through the window which is open. And only after you have closed the window, you finally can talk to your friend. Learning Qigong is like this. You get your instruction on how to move and only search for sensations that you can understand in the beginning, the physical and mental ones. While practicing, you will get sensations such as warmth, maybe some tingling, awareness of gravity, and so on. So now you adjust your movement in such a manner that these sensations become, next page, become a constant and, if possible, spread out through the entire body. By the way, This works differently for the tingling sensation, as it will only present itself in the yang surface of the body. Anyway, once you have achieved that, you will notice somewhere distant in the background other sensations. And now you adjust mind and movement so that you can allow these new sensations to become stronger. So now you are fine-tuning your movements, and again, new sensations appear. Consequently, you start searching for how to move in such a manner that these new awarenesses become constant. And so on. You constantly change. That is why you often hear me say, if you move like I move, then I am a bad teacher. You move according to your awareness, your body type, your character, and your understanding, not mine. Three, you can climb a ladder just as high as you can let go of the step you're standing on. Or in short, grab the next step as soon as you see it. I repeat, you can climb a ladder just as high as you can let go of the step you're standing on. This is a very, very important one. Learning Qigong is like climbing a ladder. You go from this one step to the one above that one. What does this mean? Well, the saying simply means that you should work towards the sensations behind the sensations. Try to spread these throughout the entire body. And constantly keep your awareness open to sensations behind the sensation you've just opened up to. And adjust your movement in such a manner that the new sensation can become a constant, equally spread out, and so on and so on. Yes, this means that the way you do Qigong constantly changes, that the way you experience Qigong will constantly change as well. But that is why you'll often hear me say, if you move like you have learned to move, then there will be no progress. Forget what you have learned. Thinking versus doing, if then, does not equal the experience. Now, in the above, there has been a lot of talk about Chinese philosophy, and no, please, no more. But alas, there is one thing left to talk about, and that is thinking versus experience. Thinking, whether it is in philosophy or mathematics, requires logic, and logic is actually quite simple. It is a constant true false, a constant if-then method of reasoning. If this, then that. And by continuing to reason in such a manner, you will finally arrive at the truth. Or anyway, that is what the ancient Greek philosophy teaches us. And it is what modern science teaches us. Now, there is nothing wrong with thinking. If you want to drink water, you'll need a cup to put it in. Otherwise, the water will be everywhere except in your mouth. Thinking is not the water. Thinking is the cup. And the cup contains and shapes your experience. Experience is the water. Now, if thinking shapes your experience, then we should be very precise in how and what we think. If the cup is broken, then the water will leak out. If it is oddly shaped, we will spill the water while drinking. But it is in this being precise where we go wrong. First of all, let me say, you are not who you think you are. Thinking is just a tool. The philosopher Descartes was wrong when he stated, I think, therefore I am. And if you don't agree with this, then kick a rock in the dark with your bare foot, and your toes will tell you that the rock really, really exists. But the rock is not thinking. Of course, it is very well possible that I have misunderstood Descartes, and that he meant that I create the rock in my mind. That, of course, is a very interesting idea and an example of true Western philosophy. So, okay, I won't kick the rock. Instead, you kick the rock. If it hurts me, then the rock is in my mind. If it hurts you, however, then we maybe should consider the possibility that the rock actually exists, even though it is not thinking and even though it was not in my mind. Now, knowing that Descartes was wrong and thinking has nothing to do with our existence, thinking still is a tool, and we have to learn to use it properly, just like when you use a hammer. You hit the nail with the head of the hammer, not with the grip. However, where thinking is concerned, that is exactly what we do. Now, thinking is something that can be shaped and taught. That is why we go to school, because there is a system around us that wants to shape us into fitting in and taking part. How often do you not hear large companies, the cogwheels of the machine, complain to politicians that school education does not fit their needs? And lo and behold, then the politicians start to adapt the schooling system to the needs of the companies, instead to the need of becoming a proper human being. You don't learn anything useful at school, such as how to deal with your emotions, how to skin a chicken, how to gut a pig, or what herbs, flowers, and insects you can eat in the forest. You do not learn how to defend yourself, nor do you learn how to stay healthy. Again, you only learn things that plug you into the machine called human society. In order to stay within the limits of obedience to that machine, you are taught a manner of thinking that is called logical thinking. Actually, this logical thinking can be a very useful tool, but instead of using it for what it can do, we are being taught to use it for what it should not do. Like the medicine that I talked about before. Here we are, using a medicine, our thinking, whilst neglecting its side effects. There are two ways of what logical thinking should not do. The first one is something I'd like to refer to as logical deduction. The second one is if-then thinking. Let me explain. Logical deduction is a phrase I use for the following. Suppose I draw a couple of dots. I have to get up. I draw a couple of dots like this. Mark my art. Okay, well, now when I ask people where they think I put the next dot, where I put the next dot, almost everybody comes up with this. Something like that. But why? I didn't ask them to complete the circle. The question was where they think I put the next dot, which might have been anywhere. So it could have been like this. There, 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 there. Why not? Or let's say, oh, no page. Let's say I draw this circle of dots. Shall we go for the color? Again, like this. Oh, nice circle. Now I ask people to connect the dots. Again, almost everybody connects the dots like this. You get this. So there they go, there, there, like that. But why? Why not like this? Or like this? That is because their logical thinking is not about logic. It's all about wanting to please, wanting to do it right, or fearing to do it wrong, as if there is a right or wrong in logic. People are afraid to think logically because they find it cold, emotionless, without heart. And yes, that is exactly what it is. So this logical deduction is a clear example of how one does not want to use this emotionalized logical thinking. The second example I mentioned is the if-then reasoning. This, in fact, comes from a computer language called BASIC, which was very popular in the 80s and 90s of the previous century. That computer language consists entirely of tiny commands. If this occurs, then you do that, or else you do thus, etc., and so on. A constant flow of ifs and thens. Although this language is called logical, it actually is not logical at all. It is just a string of commands, nothing more, nothing less. But people do confuse the straightforwardness and coldness of this language with logical thinking. And I wouldn't want to give a penny to everybody who uses this line of thought in his or her Qigong. If I can feel this, then the next step should be. However, Qigong does not work this way. There is no universal roadmap guiding you step by step following this if-then plan. There is only this, well, this Harry Potter type roadmap that says that you'll be where you are when you're already there. My point is that Qigong can be compared to a large palace where everybody tries to get in. But since the palace is so big that there are many, many entrances, everybody stands at a different door, and I cannot explain to you how to get in. It is your door, not mine. The one thing I can do, however, is telling you what it should look like once you get into the next corridor of the palace. In a discussion between the Buddhist sage Bodhidharma and his pupil Eka, Bodhidharma replied to a question that all methods are simply a product of the mind. So forget the method, forget the thinking about, and just experience the experience. Seizing the intangible. What are we working with? So now we finally have established what it is we're talking about when we are discussing the subject of Qigong. Qigong is something that we cannot know, that we cannot describe, and for which there is no roadmap, no system, no method. What is Qi? In the beginning, I already said that Qigong is not what people want it to be. It is just what the name says. Skill in Qi. But what is Qi? In my revision of the Brennan translation of Chen Yanden's book on Tai Chi, I explain Qi as follows. Qi, in fact, is quite simple to explain, but for this we'll have to establish two totally different types of context. The physical, medical, alchemical, and physical exercises, worldview on one side, and the observations of nature on the other. Starting with the latter, the observations of nature, we encounter, for instance, the Chinese word for the weather, Tianqi, the Qi of heaven. What is weather? A lot of things are happening. The wind is blowing, and we feel that. Rain is falling, and we get wet. The sun is shining, and we get warm. All these things happen without us us being people living in old times, without any modern scientific schooling. All these things happen without us being able to see the cause of it. So in this case, chi is not so much energy, but more generally spoken, an invisible cause. Where the physical approach is concerned, when performing physical exercise, undergoing a disease, or meditating, again, a lot of things are happening. We can feel relaxation and we can trace it inside our body just as we can feel and trace tension. We can become aware of heaviness or lightness, of something going up or down inside our body. We can sense stagnations or the release of these same stagnations. We can notice ourselves feeling happy or sad and observe the physical sensations belonging to these emotional states, and so on. In this case, chi, again, is not so much energy, but more an awareness of sensations. This is all there is to chi. It is either an invisible cause or an awareness of sensations, or a bit of both. How does chi work? Okay. In my book, Iedereen is mijn leraar, everybody is my teacher, I explain that the vision on how chi works can be subdivided between a level system and a quality system. First, the level system. In the level system, we look at different layers of chi. When one, even before birth, is being conceived in the mother, then this is as an energetic ball, the dantian. Around this, the layer shapes itself consisting of 8 extra meridians. I'll get up, you'll lose my face. But, like this. So, I start again. You're being conceived in the mother as an energetic ball, the dantian. Let's make it black. Around this, the layer shapes itself consisting of the 8 extra meridians. Around that layer are the 12 organ meridians. And around those are very tiny meridians, capillary meridians. And all this is being surrounded by matter, flesh, bones, muscles, and so on. In this way, you gradually and step by step merge from heavenly chi into matter. Now the chi in every layer has its own frequency that lies close to the chi frequency in the next layer. In this manner, the chi from the dantian can just communicate with the chi in the 8 meridians. The chi in the 8 meridians can communicate with the chi in the dantian, as well as with the chi in the 12 organ meridians. The chi in the organ meridians, where was I, can likewise communicate with the chi in the extra meridians and with the chi in the capillary meridians. And the chi in the capillary meridians with the chi in the organ meridians, as well with the matter, skin, flesh, bones, muscles, and so on. Now the chi in the dantian, that's the same chi as the chi from heaven. So in order to tune ourselves to heaven, the chi outside of our body, we have to turn inward. Then we get to the quality system. The quality system is about how the chi from outside our body is being transformed into the chi inside our body. It tells us why a good control over this process is important to our health, physical health. For this, we first will have to learn about the chi mechanism, which is all about the production of chi. In this chi mechanism, we bring 2 qualities of chi into our body. From the outside in, Kung Chi, empty chi, through breathing air. Gu Chi, raw chi, through the intake of food and drinks. And chocolate candy. I'm very fond of chocolate candy. Anyway, that's beside the point. There we go again. I need a human being, something like that. So, let's make a face. Nose, mouth. There we go. That's the front, more or less. Chest. Abdomen. That's all I need. Now I'll go stand on the other side because color. The Qigong comes from the air. We breathe it in and it goes to the lungs. Let's change color. Then there is the Gucci. I hope you can read this more or less. I'll write bigger. The Gucci, food and drinks, there, goes to the stomach. And we'll get there, spleen. Okay, now we have a basic idea of what to work with and the story to tell. So, there we go. Wait. The Qigong is taken into the lungs. The Gucci goes to the stomach, where it is being divided between waste and useful stuff. The waste goes to the intestines, that way. The useful stuff goes to the spleen, that way. The spleen transports that cleaned up Gucci upward, passing the lungs. There the Gucci meets the Qigong, so they come together. There the two become one, but more or less comparable to water and oil, which can be transported as one fluid, but the two, water and oil, do not merge between themselves. This unity of Qigong and Gucci goes to the heart. Somewhere there. The heart. Where was I? To the heart. And there, well, due to some kind of electrical shock, give it a name, there they can merge and they transform into qi and blood. This qi we call zheng qi. Zheng qi, the true qi. And that is, I no drawing, and that is the first of three qi qualities that, on this level, we are working with in Qigong. The second quality is the type that caused that electrical shock. It is on the one hand given to us at our birth as a form of raw qi. And on the other hand, it is the raw qi that we are made of. It is called geen. Geen. This geen can be compared to a rainwater barrel, but be aware. Geen is the water in the barrel, but also the barrel itself. Now it is very well possible that the barrel leaks or is weak in another manner. If so, then this will show itself in the form of, for example, a handicap, a hereditary disease, or an early death. Or maybe there is not enough water in the barrel. In that case, we will get sick easily and die at an early age, because the amount of water in the barrel dictates the length of our life. Apart from all that, the barrel has one tiny hole at the bottom. That is where the jing gets out, and that's the jing that we use up to live. So there is this. Somewhere we are made of a barrel. Ta-da! Let's put it here for a moment. Full of water, but a tiny hole. And that jing gets out, it fires up the organs, we'll get to that. But anyway, jing is the second quality of qi that we are working with in Qigong. Now the jing coming from that barrel can determine the length of our life because she is being used to make the organs function adequately. It moves through the empty space between the organs, or in between, to get from the barrel to its destination. And soon as jing is being used, the destination being one of the organs. This one, that one, that one, that one, and all the other organs. Now, as soon as jing is being used, moving from the barrel to the organs and firing up the organs with the electrical shock, we call it yuan qi, original qi. It is this yuan qi that gives the shock to the heart so that it can merge kun qi and gu qi into qi and blood. Yuan qi is the third quality of qi we work with in Qigong. Now the amount of jing that we get from our parents is finite and will slowly diminish. Luckily, there are ways to replenish it. If we live a healthy life with not too much overexertion, not too much nor too little healthy food, good air, the proper amount of activity, then at the end of the day, we will not have used up our daily amount of qi. During the night, when we are sleeping, this qi leftover will be transformed back into jing. The jing that is given to us by our parents is called pre-heaven jing. The jing that we produce ourselves is called post-heaven jing. The quality is the same, the name only says something about its origin. Because this post-heaven jing is being re-injected into the barrel will empty at a slower rate, which shows itself as a longer and healthier life. So by means of a conclusion, there are three types of qi we work with in Qigong, named qi, jing, and yuan qi. Jing is responsible for the length and quality of our life, and we do have the possibility to slow down the process of losing this jing. Question. I have heard that qi training is all about jing, qi, and shun, but I do not hear you talk about shun. Why is that? That was a good student. Yes, jing, qi, and shun are called the three treasures, and it is true that when jing refines, it becomes qi. And when qi refines, it becomes shun. This is why you train, this is what you train to achieve in Neidan, the internal alchemy. Qigong, however, is not Neidan. At its very best, it can be an entrance to Neidan, but there is too much physical movement to be equal to it. That is why we do not talk about shun in Qigong. What does Qigong do? Earlier I stated that Qigong is the skill of qi, and that is exactly what it is. But in a different manner than you are used to hearing. There are, for instance, those teachers that will tell you that you practice to move your qi. Actually, this is just as silly as someone teaching you to move your blood. Your blood already moves. With qi, it's just the same. Qi already moves. What could you possibly add to that? Then there are those teachers that tell you that you are practicing to build up your qi, make more, put it inside the dantian, things like that. Now it is true that Qigong can be used for just that. The question is, however, if you should want that. Again, you can compare this to blood. Suppose there is this so-called master who teaches a method to put more blood into your veins. Would you go study with him? Okay, let's say you do. Then what happens? You get all pumped up. You'll suffer high blood pressure and other physical diseases related to that high blood pressure, such as premature deterioration of your physical system, emotions of anger, and so on. In the extreme, you might even suffer physical damage to the brain. Who would want that? Now, where blood is concerned, most people are already well aware of this, so the blood-adding teacher will not get many students. But blood and qi always go together, and the effect of too much qi in your system are displayed by the blood. You will get the same symptoms of high blood pressure, but without the actual high blood pressure. People who have done a lot of qi building exercises can be easily recognized by their angry and explosive attitude, their physique as if they will blow up any moment, things like that. Why would you want that? The point is that unless you are sick or you're a drug addict, you have exactly the proper amount of qi. You don't need any more. Now, what is the case in many, if not most people? That their qi cannot freely move. The circulation is obstructed somewhere, somehow. When such a stagnation is severe, then it will make itself known as a pain sensation, an illness, or an emotion such as sadness or anger. And now we can talk about Qigong. As I said before, Qigong is the skill of qi. It does not move the qi. It does not want to make you get more qi. What it does is that it facilitates the free movement of qi. It facilitates movement, but it does not move. Please note the difference. What does this mean? It means that Qigong helps you to become aware of sensations. It is, in fact, a sensitivity training exercise. Now, these sensations are actually stagnations, as everything you can physically feel is, in fact, some form of stagnation. By becoming more and more aware of these stagnations, you can adjust your physical shape as well as your muscular and mental tension, so that you can dissolve these stagnations. When there are no stagnations, qi can flow freely and perform its circulation as it should. You will be free of pain, free of illness. So in conclusion, Qigong does not give you more qi, nor does it move your qi. It is a sensitivity exercise that helps you to become aware of and remove stagnations in mind and body so that qi can do its thing. Now, I am fully aware of the fact that there are those who do use Qigong in order to gain more qi, or to forcefully move qi through the body. Well, what can I say? Again, let me compare Qigong to a hammer, since they both are tools. You can use a hammer to hit a nail. That is what it's meant for. But you can also use it to hit yourself in the head. Qigong is not unlike that. And let's keep it at that. Continuing the story of what Qigong does. There are many types of qi training, and we must make a difference between them. The most important qi training leads us to Neidan, internal alchemy. Neidan is all about the search for immortality. Nothing more, nothing less. I can assure you that's a level that you and I will never make in this lifetime. However, a few steps lower on the scale, there are these longevity effects, and when we get better, we might even achieve some level of extraordinary power. And no, I do not have such a level. I cannot make fire. Actually, they are all side effects of the search for immortality. And there are no side effects. This Nedan, this search for immortality, is generally accepted to have 4 levels. The first level is all about restoring the jing. Remember jing? The barrel. If this jing is restored, then our immune system will be strong, our lifespan will be long, and we will live a strong life. In order to be able to restore jing, only one quality is necessary: tranquility. Not relaxation, no, tranquility. That means that the mind should be still, undistracted, free and disconnected from thought, and that the qi should be able to move freely. That is all we need in order to restore the jing, tranquility. So the training of the mind is equally important as, or maybe even more important than, the training in physical sensitivity. And Qigong actually helps you with that. One of the training aspects in Qigong is to follow the trajectory of your breath. This is an alternative method to the Isho Dantian that we use in my school. Again, we'll talk about this later, but for now, let's just state that there are 3 methods to quiet the mind. Follow the breath, Isho Dantian, or think as much as you like. Eventually the thinking will get exhausted and will stop all by itself. And finally we know what Qigong is and what it does. What Qigong is? Qigong is a portal that can lead us into Nedan. What Qigong does? It helps us dissolve internal stagnations in our mind and in our physique. Can you use Qigong wrong? Yes, that is very well possible. You can use it to add qi, which will blow you up, and in the long run damage you. You can use it to feel good, consequently getting addicted to feeling good and not growing any further. When is something Qigong? In my book, I'm advertising a bit. In my book, Stilte in Yourself, Silence in Yourself, I give the reader an oversight that explains when an exercise method is Qigong from both an historical as well as a methodological point of view. This is not what I want to look into right here. No. Here I'd like to look at what makes Qigong Qigong. And luckily, the answer to this question can be very short. Yay! An exercise method is Qigong when it helps you make all awarenesses go away. No physical awarenesses because you move so precisely that it has actually become some kind of standing still. No mental awareness because there is only dantian or breath. A lightness in the head which connects you to heaven. A heaviness in the legs, which connects you to earth, and a not being there, which allows your entire being to become the interaction of heaven and earth. What do you want it to do? When people start practicing, they don't know anything. Maybe they have read a book or watched tons of YouTube videos, but they haven't experienced anything, and without experience, there can be no real knowledge, only brain pain. That having said, we all have to start somewhere, of course. For me personally, it was the search for power, which I thought to find in what I thought was internal training. Boy, was I wrong. For others, it might very well be the search for health, for enjoyment in the form of a nice hobby, or a search for relaxation in order to counter the daily stress from work. So many people, so many reasons. And one of the things that I have learned, not only as a teacher, but as a student myself as well, is that it totally does not matter why somebody starts training Qigong. You can tell me and I will nod politely, but actually I don't care. What is interesting, however, is why do you continue to practice? At what point Were you able to let go of your initial ideas? And did your practice really start? At what point could you let go of what you wanted from Qigong? The point being, wanting and wishing are brain activities. We can be aware of them. And anything that you can be aware of is a form of stagnation. So as long as you want Qigong to do this or that for you, you obstruct the free flow of Qi. As soon as you let go, your training starts. Doing without action. How do we work with that? Okay, now we start with an overview of what we are going to talk about further on in the next episodes in more detail. So I'm not going too deep into these subjects as they will come back when we talk about the Qigong exercises. But here I want to lay a foundation. It starts with the phrase doing without action, which is exactly what Qigong eventually does. Eventually, because we will have to go through several stages before we are there. And during these intermediate stages, doing is exactly what we are doing. The phrase doing without action is actually derived from the Taoist saying Wu Wei. I read in some book that Wu Wei means something like doing without doing. Well, I can't say that the translation is wrong, but who on earth understands this? Actually, Wu Wei literally means the not having of acting. And although this is a somewhat, bent and cooked usage of the English language, it does say what it is. And it allows itself to be easily explained. If you are being pushed and you feel the push, then that was because you were resisting. Maybe not on purpose. Maybe it was just the slowness of your body mass. But the fact remains that you felt the push, so there was some form of resistance. Now imagine that you are being pushed, but you're moving with the push in such an exact manner that you do not feel the hand pushing, nor do you feel it detaching. The pushing hand and your body move at the exact same speed. You do not feel a change in sensation. The pressure of the hand remains the same. So in order to have a no sensation experience, you will in fact have to move. In order to experience no action, you will have to act. That is what Wu Wei means. Do not resist, do not flee, but connect. But what do you connect to in Qigong? 5 levels of experience. Physical, mental, linear, field, and spiral. We discern many types of sensation in the practice of Qigong. For instance, there is breath. We can feel it going to our abdomen, whilst our brain knows that this is impossible. Air goes into the lungs. So breath is one example. There is the heaviness of our limbs when we relax enough. So there is the tension inside our head when we think too much. There are physical sensations of tension or relaxation or muscular pains or things like that, and so on. Now let's make one thing very, very clear. You can't feel Qi. You can, however, feel blood circulating, and as one of the functions of Qi is that it moves the blood, a good blood flow is an indication of a good and free flow of Qi. You can feel an indication. You can feel warmth inside your body, and again, one of the functions of Qi is to warm the body. So warmth is also an indication of a free flow of Qi. In this sense, Qi is actually comparable to the Western understanding of energy. You can't feel kinetic energy, but you will feel the tennis ball hitting your head. Now, if you have read my books or followed my lessons, then you will know by now that I follow a line of development. I always introduce you as a first to physical awareness, and I teach you how Daodejing works. The physical awareness is very, very important, and it is my experience that people skip this level way too fast. It is all about learning to move in accordance with physical rules, and it is these physical rules that help you become aware of the physical sensations that are there, because you did not move according to these rules. So in fact, you are learning to feel to become aware. Once you have learned to move free from obstruction, you can continue your personal research with the awareness that will reveal itself once mind and body move correctly. The first sensation to work with usually is a linear one, namely warmth going to your hands. Why is that a linear sensation? Because we are linear. Our arm has length. So in order to spread the warmth throughout the body, we must open up and follow the line of our arm, hence linear. Now, we do not have to commit a lifetime to improving and expanding this linear experience. Like I said before, grab the next step as soon as you see it. And the next step is the awareness of a field that is enveloping you. In order to understand the reason for this, we can take a look at electricity. No, Qi is not a form of electricity, but how Qi works sometimes compares to how electricity works. Take, for instance, an electrical wire. On one side you push the button, and on the other side, ta-da, the light switches on. That is, of course, because of the electrical current going through the wire. Now, if you have an electrical spool in your house, then please notice that in the center there is a small button. That is a fuse, and it is there for safety reasons. When I was younger, this fuse was not there, and many houses burned down because of it. People used the electrical wire without unrolling it completely. And there they encountered the side effects, there are no side effects, of an electricity cable. It only transports electricity, but this transport generates a magnetic field and heat. You won't notice this when the cable is totally rolled out, but when it's rolled up in a bundle, then the heat accumulates and you'll get a fire. With Qi, this works more or less in the same manner. In the above, I have explained how there is a level system of Qi. Let's go back to this one. Nice picture. In the above, I have explained how there is a level system of Qi. In the center, there is the dantian. Around that, the 8 meridians, and so on. Organ meridians, capillary meridians, skin, flesh, bones. This can be compared to the electrical spool. The effect, by the way, is very similar. When we are able to open up our system and allow Qi to flow freely, then one of the things we experience is warmth. Enormous warmth, up to the point even where it becomes unpleasant. And there is something else, where the electrical current also generates a magnetic field. Our free flow of Qi gives us the sensitivity to become aware of a field surrounding us. So after a basic linear sensation, we can become aware of the field. And once we become aware of the field surrounding us, we can start practicing to free up the space between our skin and our flesh. This is very important for several reasons we will discuss at a later stage. For now, I just want to mention it because once the Qi can flow freely through this newly found in-between, it gives you a spiral-like sensation. Now this takes some years to achieve, but once we have gotten there, we can go back to the basics. Connect our movement in such a manner to the sensation that both the physical awareness of the movement and the spiral awareness, that they cancel each other, after which it feels like if we disappear. One onion, many skins. Which one must I do? So, after this long talk, we can summarize the entire story as follows. We cannot talk about Qigong because it means something different to each and every one of us. In itself, Qigong is a method that helps us to become aware of sensations and, consequently, helps us dissolve them, so that the Qi can flow freely. In order to get there, we will evolve through a range of physical and mental sensations and awarenesses. These sensations can be summarized as physical, mental, linear, field, and spiral. Of course, every one of these has many sublayers, and so the question might arise, which one should you do? Which level is the best to practice? Well, the answer is easy and not so easy at the same time. First, the not so easy part. To want is a mental stagnation. Get rid of it. You're blocking your free flow of Qi. Then, the easy part. Work with what announces itself. Maybe you were thinking, today I want to practice, let's say, the field awareness. But for some reason, this is very difficult. However, you do get warm hands and warm lower arms, so switch your intention to working with the linear experience. That is what the body apparently is receptive to. Don't worry about what the teacher says that you should do. Don't care for what your mind says that you should do. Let Qi speak for itself. A bucket in a bucket. Which one can I do? Working like that actually works like a bucket, in a bucket, in a bucket, and so on. You pour water in the first bucket, and eventually it will overflow into the next. Don't think about which bucket you want to start or work with. Just pour. Just throw water on them, and one of the many buckets will fill up. That's the one you want to work with. Mind you, tomorrow is a whole new day, so maybe another bucket will be the one to work with tomorrow. It's never the same. And then you use that one. Work to dissolve the sensations that announce themselves. The body will know. In between and climbing the ladder. How to do. Now, how do you do all this? How do you make sensations come forward, and how do you make them disappear? How do you still awareness? How do you still the mind? How do you grab the next step of the ladder? I am aware of the fact that there are more than 1,000 questions. Actually, there is only one answer. Always search for the in-between. If you feel your head, sink to your feet and then search for the in-between, the dantian. If you feel a discomfort in your back, then search for or make the sensation at the opposite side. Again, search for the in-between. Once you find it, both sensations, front and back, will dissolve. It takes minimally 2 points to define a center. If you want progress, then look at where you came from, then find the center. And maybe you can see where you are right now. Well, this concludes Understanding Qigong, the introduction. I thank you for having all this patience with me, and hope you get something out of it, of course. The plan is that next week I will start with a talk on the first Qigong exercise, and the week after that the second exercise, and so on. And that will be talking, maybe some drawings, and a little bit of practice, less practice, because now it's all about knowing. You can do the practice on the Tuesdays and Fridays when we come together for the repetition of Qigong. So I thank you for being here. It was a pleasure from my side, and hope you liked it, and I hope to see you next time again. Stay safe, stay healthy. Bye.